My family laughed at my empty gift at the wedding. Then the lawyer read my real gift, the eviction notice for their mansion. The grand ballroom at the Vance estate, a place of inherited opulence, shimmered under the crystal chandeliers, their light refracting into 1,000 tiny rainbows across the polished marble and the faces of the well-heeled guests. The air was thick with the cloying sweetness of expensive lilies, a scent that for Aethelred Vance, a dignified 78-year-old widow, felt less like celebration and more like a funereal shroud. Her silver hair, immaculately coiffed, framed a face that held the quiet sorrow of decades, a sorrow her elegant silk dress did little to conceal. Today, her granddaughter Anya's wedding, a day that should have brimmed with unadulterated joy, felt instead like the ominous prelude to an inevitable, final act of a long, weary play. She sat at a table slightly removed from the main family, a position that had become her unspoken designation over the years. From this vantage point, she observed her son, Magnus, a man whose tailored suit seemed to shrink his already small heart, and his wife, Vivian, a woman whose smile rarely reached her cold, calculating eyes. They presided over the head table, beaming for the cameras, basking in the glow of an event they had orchestrated, or rather, from which they were the primary beneficiaries. Aethelred, as always, remained the silent financier, the invisible hand behind the curtain of their lavish lives. A quiet sigh escaped her lips, a familiar lament for the love and connection she had so desperately sought, and so rarely found. When the time came for the exchange of gifts, Aethelred was called forward, a deferential hush falling over the main table. She carried a beautifully wrapped, mid-sized box, adorned with a delicate white ribbon. It was light, almost weightless in her delicate hands, its lightness a deliberate irony only she understood. Magnus and Vivian watched her approach, their expressions a familiar blend of patronizing anticipation and thinly veiled impatience. They had already received countless expensive gifts, a cascade of designer goods and gleaming luxury from their guests, but they always expected something truly substantial, something grand, from Aethelred. After all, she was the seemingly inexhaustible wellspring of their seemingly endless prosperity, the source of every comfort and luxury they enjoyed. Aethelred offered the box to Anya with a gentle smile, her gaze holding a profound meaning that passed unnoticed by the distracted bride. "My dearest Anya," she began, her voice soft but clear enough to carry over the gentle murmur of the guests, "this gift is a symbol of something invaluable, something I hope you will cherish above all else." Her words were a quiet prophecy, a subtle hint of the truth that was about to unfold, though no one present could grasp its weight. Anya, momentarily distracted by a text message on her diamond-studded phone, accepted the box with a polite but perfunctory nod, her attention already drifting. As she tore the pristine wrapping paper, a ripple of quiet expectation went through the family table. Magnus leaned forward, his eyes alight with a greedy glint, anticipating another significant addition to his overflowing coffers. Vivian adjusted her pearl necklace, a hint of a smirk playing on her perfectly painted lips, already picturing the expensive bauble or grand gesture she imagined the box contained. Anya's fingers fumbled slightly with the lid, and then it was off. She peered inside, her brow furrowing in confusion. Her eyes widened, then narrowed, a flicker of bewilderment passing over her features. The box was empty. A nervous titter started at the main table, quickly escalating into open, mocking laughter from Magnus and Vivian. Magnus threw his head back, a loud, booming guffaw echoing through the high-ceilinged ballroom, almost rattling the chandeliers. "Empty? Mother, what is this, a joke?" he exclaimed, wiping a tear of mirth from his eye, his voice dripping with condescension. "Trying to teach Anya a lesson about minimalism, are we? Or perhaps you're finally running out of ways to spend all that money?" His words, though meant to humiliate, were steeped in a profound ignorance of the real meaning of the moment. Vivian, her perfectly manicured hand covering her mouth, joined in, her laughter shrill and unfeeling, like a rusty gate creaking open. "Oh, Aethelred, you do have a unique sense of humor. An empty box. Goodness, the symbolism is just too much for us common folk." Her eyes, cold and triumphant, met Aethelred's. They genuinely believed this was her subtle admission of dwindling funds, a symbolic waving of a white flag, a confession of her financial decline. They saw it as nothing more than a confirmation of their long-held belief that she was an eccentric, fading old woman, losing her grasp on reality and, more importantly, on her wealth. Anya, mortified by the sudden spotlight on her grandmother and the ensuing ridicule, flushed crimson, her youthful face contorting in embarrassment. "Grandma, what?" she began, but her voice trailed off under the oppressive weight of her parents' cruel laughter and the sudden, uncomfortable silence from the other guests. Ethelred, however, did not flinch. Her composure was absolute, a magnificent fortress against their derision. Her gaze remained steady, almost unnervingly serene, observing them as if from a great distance. A faint, knowing smile touched her lips, a smile that held no humor, only a quiet, resolute power. Her eyes, usually soft and forgiving, now held the glint of polished steel, reflecting a deep, unwavering determination. She looked directly at Magnus and Vivian, allowing their laughter to wash over her, a torrent of sound that, for once, failed to break her spirit. In the corner of the room, discreetly positioned among the other guests, a man in an impeccably tailored suit, Mr. Finch, Ethelred's longtime lawyer and confidant, met her gaze. He offered a subtle, almost imperceptible nod. The signal had been given. The real gift, the one that would shatter their world into a million pieces, was about to be unwrapped. Magnus and Vivian's laughter died down, replaced by a lingering smugness, a self-satisfied air of victory. They thought they had humiliated her, exposed her perceived foolishness for all to see. They had no idea that the empty box was, indeed, a symbol, a poignant, devastating symbol of everything she had given them, of the vast, immeasurable fortune and boundless love she had poured into their lives, and how utterly empty their gratitude had been in return. It was the last thing she would ever give them. Aethelred Vance had not always been a woman of quiet resolve, her spirit hardened by decades of unrequited generosity. Once, she had been a woman of boundless love and naive, trusting generosity. The vast fortune she now possessed was not her own making, but a legacy from her beloved late husband, Edgar Vance, a shrewd industrialist who had built an empire from the ground up through sheer intellect and unwavering dedication. Edgar had adored Ethelred, his steadfast companion and muse, and their life together had been a rich tapestry woven with shared dreams, boisterous laughter, and a deep, abiding respect that formed the bedrock of their enduring affection. Their home, though grand, had always felt warm, filled with shared moments and genuine connection. When he passed away 15 years prior, leaving her sole heir to a staggering wealth that few could comprehend, Ethelred's primary thought was not of personal indulgence, nor of accumulating more, but of securing the happiness and future of her only son, Magnus, and his burgeoning family. The depth of her grief for Edgar was immense, but it was matched by an equally profound desire to honor his memory by caring for their lineage. Magnus, then in his late 30s, had always been a charming but fundamentally feckless individual, prone to grand ideas that rarely materialized beyond the blueprint stage. His charisma masked a profound lack of drive and a comfortable reliance on others. He had married Vivian, a woman whose ambition dwarfed her compassion, a ruthless pragmatist with an insatiable desire for status and material possessions. Together, they had 2 children, Anya and a younger son, Liam, whom Ethelred loved deeply, hoping to forge a bond that transcended mere financial ties. Ethelred, still raw with grief from Edgar's passing, poured her love and her inherited wealth into her son's family, believing with an earnest, almost childlike faith that true familial bonds were forged through unconditional support and unwavering generosity. She envisioned herself as the cherished matriarch, the wise elder whose presence brought comfort, wisdom, and boundless joy to their lives. Instead, with a slow, agonizing inevitability, she slowly became something else entirely, an ATM with a pulse, a walking, breathing financial resource, devoid of emotional value. The first significant gift had been the mansion, a sprawling, palatial estate nestled in the most exclusive part of town, far beyond Magnus and Vivian's own meager means. They had always yearned for such a place, their wistful glances at real estate brochures a constant, unspoken plea. Ethelred, seeing their transparent longing, had surprised them by providing the entire down payment, a sum that could have easily purchased several smaller, perfectly respectable homes. Her heart had swelled with the joy of giving, imagining their delight. She had then quietly, almost secretly, taken over the hefty mortgage payments, the exorbitant property taxes, and all the associated maintenance costs, including the wages of the sprawling staff required to maintain such a property. "It's your home, dear," she would say, brushing off their perfunctory, almost dismissive thanks with a gentle wave of her hand. "I just want you to be comfortable, truly comfortable." Her comfort was their opulence. Comfort, however, soon escalated to unbridled opulence. The mansion underwent extensive renovations, each one more extravagant than the last, all meticulously funded by Aethelred. A state-of-the-art kitchen, gleaming with imported marble and professional-grade appliances, a sprawling home theater with plush velvet seating and a projection system worthy of a cinema, an infinity pool that seemed to melt into the horizon in the meticulously landscaped backyard, each edition meticulously chosen by Vivian from glossy design magazines and paid for, without question, by Aethelred. When the pool needed a new pump, Vivian would simply send the bill, often unmarked and unitemized, directly to Aethelred's personal assistant. When a century-old oak tree fell in the yard during a storm, Aethelred's funds covered the extensive work of the landscapers. They never asked, not truly, they simply expected, their entitlement growing with each passing year, each new indulgence. Their garage became a revolving showcase of luxury vehicles, each one purchased outright, or leased with payments assumed, by Aethelred. A sleek German sedan for Magnus, always the latest model, a sporty convertible for Vivian, traded in every 2 years, and later, when Anya turned 16, a brand new, top-of-the-line SUV, despite Anya having little need for it. The insurance, the maintenance, the occasional fender bender, all covered by Aethelred's seemingly bottomless coffers. Magnus would casually mention, during one of their infrequent phone calls, "Mother, the Bentley needs new tires, awfully expensive ones this time," and within days, the invoice would arrive at her address, already paid by her diligent assistant. She was a silent, uncomplaining financier, a ghost in their luxurious machine. Education was another vast, ongoing expense. Anya and Liam were enrolled in the most exclusive private schools, their uniforms, trips, and extracurriculars all handled. This was followed by elite universities abroad, chosen not for academic excellence but for their prestigious names and the social cachet they conferred. Aethelred paid every penny of their tuition, their lavish accommodation, their textbooks, and their generous allowances that allowed them to live far beyond the means of their peers. She vividly recalled attending Anya's graduation from university, a moment of profound pride for her, a quiet triumph she wished she could share. Yet, Anya barely acknowledged her, rushing instead to her parents who preened in the front row, basking in the reflected glory and taking full credit for their daughter's success. Aethelred had overheard Vivian, with a saccharine smile, telling a fellow parent, "Oh yes, we spared no expense for Anya's education. Only the best for our children, you know." The words had stung, a fresh cut on an already bruised heart, a bitter confirmation of her invisible role. Lavish vacations became a biannual ritual, a non-negotiable part of their opulent lifestyle. Sun-drenched trips to the Maldives, exhilarating ski excursions in the Swiss Alps, meticulously planned historical tours through Europe, all planned down to the smallest detail by Vivian and funded, without fail, by Aethelred. Vivian would send her a carefully curated list of estimated expenses, always rounded up, never a precise figure, often including fanciful line items. Aethelred would dutifully transfer the funds, often adding a little extra for shopping, hoping against hope that perhaps, just this once, they would invite her, even for a day. But the invitations never came, not a single one. She would see their Instagram posts, vibrant pictures of them laughing, exploring, indulging in gourmet meals and exclusive activities, and she would feel a profound loneliness, a hollowness in her chest that no amount of wealth could fill. The images of their joy, funded by her, became a poignant reminder of her own isolation. The financial support extended to every facet of their daily lives. Magnus had a series of business ventures, a tech startup that fizzled out after 6 months, a real estate scheme that never got off the ground, a boutique clothing line that amassed more debt than sales, all propped up and ultimately covered by Ethelred's endless bailouts. Their credit card bills, often astronomical, were automatically paid from Ethelred's accounts, a silent transfer that occurred without their conscious thought. Their household staff, cleaners, gardeners, a pool technician, a personal chef for a brief, extravagant period, were all on her payroll, their wages deposited directly from her accounts. She was not just their bank, she was their entire support system, their invisible infrastructure. Beyond the money, Ethelred yearned, with a silent ache, for affection, for respect, for simply being included in the family she had so generously supported. But the more she gave, the more they took, and the less they valued her. They rarely visited her, always expecting her to come to their sprawling mansion, where she often felt like a guest, a forgotten relative relegated to a corner, politely tolerated. They would forget to invite her to intimate family dinners, to holiday celebrations that were once dear to her heart, to significant life events like Anya's pre-wedding bridal shower or Liam's school play. When she did attend, her opinions were often dismissed with a casual wave of the hand, her stories cut short or interrupted. "Oh, mother, you're so old-fashioned," Magnus would sigh, rolling his eyes as if she were a tiresome child. Vivian would offer a condescending smile. "Ethelred, dear, times have changed. You wouldn't understand the complexities of modern life." The dismissiveness cut deeper than any financial burden. She remembered a particularly painful incident a few years prior, a small but significant moment that solidified her growing disillusionment. She had knitted Anya a beautiful, intricate shawl for her birthday, spending months on the delicate stitches, pouring her love and time into every knot. Anya had accepted it with a polite smile, a fleeting glance, then quickly tossed it onto a nearby chair, later finding its way, Ethelred discovered, into a donation box, unworn and unappreciated. The very next day, Vivian had proudly shown Ethelred a new designer handbag she had bought for Anya, a garish, expensive item, paid for, of course, with Ethelred's money. It was a constant, agonizing cycle. Her efforts to connect emotionally, to offer genuine, heartfelt gestures, were met with indifference, while her financial contributions were devoured with ravenous entitlement, never enough, always more. She had overheard conversations, snippets of their true feelings, that ripped through her quiet hopes like jagged glass. "Honestly, mother is so out of touch," Magnus had once grumbled to Vivian, unaware Ethelred was just around the corner, reaching for a forgotten teacup. "All she cares about is her silly little traditions. Can't she just write a check and leave us be? It's exhausting having to pretend to be interested in her old stories." Vivian had responded, her voice a low, cynical purr, "Well, darling, at least she's good for something. Imagine where we'd be without her generosity." The words had been a dagger to Ethelred's heart, a chilling confirmation of her deepest fears. She was not a beloved parent, not a cherished matriarch, she was a limitless financial resource, a burden in every other aspect, a means to an end. The empty gift at the wedding was not just a public humiliation, though it felt like one in the moment. It was the culmination of decades of this profound disrespect, the final, explicit declaration that she had nothing left to offer if it wasn't money. And in that moment, something within Ethelred shifted, irrevocably. The years of quiet suffering, the countless acts of ingratitude, the unrequited yearning for love, it all coalesced into a fierce, cold resolve that settled deep within her bones. She had given them everything she had, everything she was, and they had taken it all without a shred of gratitude, without a whisper of genuine affection. The well of her generosity had finally run dry, not because of dwindling funds, for her wealth remained vast, but because of a spirit utterly depleted of hope and patience. She knew, with absolute certainty, that it was time to reclaim her life, even if it meant tearing theirs apart with the surgical precision of a seasoned general. The day after the empty gift incident, Ethelred woke with a sense of clarity she hadn't experienced in years. The air in her modest, yet elegantly furnished home felt lighter, unburdened by the phantom chains of expectation and profound disappointment. The public humiliation, instead of breaking her, had solidified her resolve, forging it into an unyielding steel. There was no more space for doubt, no more room for the faint, flickering hope that her son and his family might one day truly see her for who she truly was, not just what she possessed. That illusion had finally, mercifully, shattered. She brewed herself a cup of Earl Grey tea, its fragrant steam rising gently, a ritual she enjoyed alone in the quiet solitude of her home. She sat in her sunlit conservatory, surrounded by the vibrant greens of her indoor plants, their silent growth a stark contrast to the tumultuous lives she had just exited. The silence was profound, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves outside her window, a gentle whisper of the natural world. Her mind was sharp, focused, meticulously outlining the precise steps she needed to take. This was not a rash decision born of fleeting anger, but a calculated, necessary act of self-preservation, the culmination of years of quiet planning and discreet legal consultation with Mr. Finch, who had foreseen this day. Her first call was to her bank. She spoke with her longtime private banker, Mr. Davies, a man who had discreetly managed her vast accounts for decades, his discretion a testament to their long professional relationship. Her voice, usually soft and gentle, now held an unyielding firmness he had rarely heard. "Mr. Davies," she began, her tone leaving no room for misinterpretation, "I need to review all standing orders, direct debits, and any credit lines associated with Magnus Vance or Vivian Vance. Effective immediately, I want all such arrangements terminated. All power of attorney I may have granted to them or on their behalf for any of their accounts or properties should also be revoked, comprehensively and irrevocably. And specifically, the mortgage payments for the property at 14 Willow Creek Lane, currently being paid from my primary investment account, are to cease with the very next cycle." Mr. Davies, accustomed to Ethelred's usually gentle requests for transfers, was momentarily taken aback, a surprised intake of breath audible through the phone line. "Mrs. Vance, are you quite certain? That particular mortgage payment is rather substantial, representing a significant portion of their monthly expenditures. And the various credit lines are quite extensive." "I am perfectly certain, Mr. Davies," Ethelred interjected, her tone leaving no room for argument, each word a hammer blow of finality. "Consider this my formal instruction, absolute and non-negotiable. Please confirm all these actions have been completed by the end of the day, with all necessary legal documentation filed." As she hung up, a profound sense of liberation washed over her, a lightness she hadn't known in decades. It was as if she had severed 1,000 invisible threads that had bound her to their insatiable demands, threads that had slowly choked her spirit. Next, she contacted her lawyer, Mr. Finch. He was not just a legal counsel, but a trusted confidant who had, over the years, witnessed the slow, agonizing erosion of Ethelred's spirit at the hands of her family, offering quiet counsel and drawing up contingency plans. He had advised her, cautiously at first, then more explicitly as their demands escalated, to protect herself, to prepare for this very moment. He had been the one who drafted the formal notice of cessation of financial support and the eviction notice for the mansion, preparing them months ago, just in case this day ever arrived. He had understood her pain, her silent suffering, better than anyone. "Mr. Finch," she said, her voice calm, devoid of tremor, "it is time. The empty gift was unwrapped yesterday, a public declaration of their true nature. Please proceed with delivering the true gift." Mr. Finch understood immediately, the quiet understanding passing between them like a silent current. "Consider it done, Mrs. Vance. I will personally ensure they receive the full documentation. It will be served at their residence this afternoon, with appropriate legal witnesses to ensure its validity and impact." He paused, his voice softening slightly, a hint of concern entering his tone. "Are you prepared for their reaction, Mrs. Vance? It will undoubtedly be explosive." Ethelred smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached her eyes. "I have been preparing for this for decades, Mr. Finch. Every slight, every insult, every act of ingratitude. I am more than ready." Her voice held the quiet conviction of someone who had faced their deepest fears and emerged stronger. Over the next few days, Ethelred methodically, almost serenely, shut down every financial pipeline that connected her to Magnus and Vivian. She cancelled the auto payments for their luxury car leases, their various club memberships, golf, yacht, exclusive social clubs, even the subscription services for their numerous streaming platforms and online shopping accounts. She closed the accounts that Vivian used for her designer shopping sprees and Magnus for his failed, increasingly desperate investments. Each click of a mouse, each phone call, each signed document, was a nail in the coffin of their dependency, a quiet act of justice being meticulously served. She felt a quiet, almost serene satisfaction, a profound sense of rightness in every action. Meanwhile, in the grand mansion at 14 Willow Creek Lane, the first ripples of discomfort began to appear, dismissed initially as minor annoyances, easily fixable by Mother. Vivian, at a high-end boutique, attempted to purchase a new silk scarf she had coveted, a small indulgence to soothe her post-wedding stress. The transaction was declined. Impossible, she huffed at the bewildered sales assistant, her voice rising in irritation. There must be some mistake. My mother-in-law handles all our cards. They are limitless. She tried another card, then another, from her vast collection of platinum and black cards. All declined. She called the bank, her voice laced with outrage, but they could only inform her, politely but firmly, that the cards were no longer active, the accounts closed. This is absurd. Aethelred must have made a mistake. She's getting senile, she fumed, storming out of the store, leaving a trail of expensive perfume and indignation. Magnus, attempting to pay for a lavish lunch with prospective business associates, faced a similar, humiliating predicament. His corporate card, usually limitless and effortlessly accepted, was declined. He had to hastily borrow money from an associate, muttering embarrassed excuses about a temporary system glitch and banking errors. He called Vivian, who was still stewing over her own shopping debacle. My cards are useless too, Magnus. What is going on? This is simply unacceptable. They both dismissed it as an administrative error, a temporary hiccup on Ethelred's end, perhaps a new quirk of her old age. She must have forgotten to transfer funds into the right accounts, Magnus grumbled, rubbing his temples in annoyance. Or perhaps she's testing us, Vivian sneered, her voice laced with suspicion. Playing one of her silly, old-fashioned games to see if we're paying attention. They were so deeply entrenched in their entitlement, so utterly dependent, that the idea of Aethelred deliberately, permanently cutting them off was utterly unfathomable, a concept beyond their comprehension. Then came the more pressing issues, the minor annoyances escalating into genuine inconveniences. The mansion's electricity was briefly cut off due to an unpaid bill, an event that sent Vivian into a furious, panicked tirade. Who pays these bills? Aethelred does. She's definitely getting senile. She's ruining everything, she shrieked at Magnus, who was equally bewildered and increasingly agitated. Their gardener, who normally arrived like clockwork twice a week, stopped showing up. The weekly cleaning service cancelled their appointments, citing unpaid invoices. Each incident was an isolated annoyance they blamed on mismanagement or Ethelred's age, refusing to connect the dots. The true panic, however, began with the mortgage. A notice arrived from the bank, stark and official, its bold red letters screaming, "Notice of default, overdue payment." Magnus stared at the document, his face paling, a cold sweat breaking out on his brow. This can't be right, he stammered, his voice thin with disbelief. Mother pays this. She always has. Every month, without fail. He called the bank, his voice wavering between indignation and a growing, primal fear. The bank representative was polite but firm, unwavering in her explanation. Mr. Vance, the standing order from the account of Ms. Aethelred Vance was cancelled 3 days ago. The payment is overdue. You are solely responsible for the mortgage now. Vivian, overhearing his frantic, desperate call, snatched the phone from his trembling hand. What do you mean, cancelled? By whom? This is our home. You can't just stop paying for it. We live here. We have children. The bank, however, was unsympathetic, bound by legalities. The legal paperwork had been clear, meticulously filed by Aethelred and Mr. Finch. As the brutal reality began to seep into their consciousness, a cold, dread fear gripped them, tightening its icy tendrils around their hearts. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't Aethelred being forgetful, or playing a game. This was deliberate. This was an act of war. And then, as if on cue, the doorbell chimed, a polite, ominous sound. Standing on their pristine doorstep were two somber-looking men, Mr. Finch, Aethelred's lawyer, his face a mask of professional gravity, and a stoic process server. In Mr. Finch's hand was a thick, official-looking envelope, a silent harbinger of doom. Magnus and Vivian exchanged a bewildered glance, their faces a mixture of confusion and growing dread. Mr. Finch? What an unexpected visit. Magnus forced a weak, strained smile, his mind racing, trying to grasp the meaning of this unannounced intrusion. Has Mother sent you? Is everything all right with her? He still clung to the hope that this was somehow related to Aethelred's old age issues, that she needed help. Mr. Finch's expression was grave, his eyes holding no warmth, no hint of the polite pleasantries they usually exchanged. Mr. and Mrs. Vance, he said, his voice devoid of warmth, cutting through their attempts at normalcy. I am here on behalf of my client, Ms. Aethelred Vance. I have a document to serve you. He extended the envelope, its crisp paper a stark white against his dark suit, a symbol of the unyielding law. Vivian, her heart beginning to pound a frantic rhythm against her ribs, took it cautiously, her fingers trembling slightly. As she read the official seal, her eyes darted to the bolded words that seemed to leap off the page and strike her with physical force, notice of eviction. Below it, equally stark and terrifying, cessation of all financial support. Magnus peered over her shoulder, his jaw dropping, his eyes wide with horror. The words blurred before his eyes, a jumble of legal jargon, but the meaning was terrifyingly, undeniably clear. Their entire world, built on a shaky foundation of inherited wealth and unearned privilege, was about to crumble. The escalating tension of the past few days, the small financial hiccups, the growing pile of unanswered bills, suddenly made horrifying, devastating sense. The musket had been loaded, the trigger pulled. Now, they waited for the bullet to strike, knowing it was inevitable, knowing it was aimed directly at the heart of their comfortable, undeserved existence. The wedding reception, which had moments ago been a scene of revelry, champagne toasts, and the murmur of polite conversation, descended into a tableau of stunned silence and escalating chaos. The empty gift laughter had barely died down, a faint echo in the grand ballroom, when Mr. Finch, precise and unyielding, stepped forward. He stood before Magnus and Vivian, his presence radiating an authority that instantly commanded attention, even over the lingering buzz of champagne and the hum of background music. Mr. and Mrs. Vance, Mr. Finch stated, his voice cutting through the festive atmosphere like a shard of ice, cool and sharp, on behalf of my client, Ms. Aethelred Vance, I have a matter of urgent legal importance to address. His gaze was unwavering, his posture rigid, signaling the gravity of the moment. Magnus, still basking in the glow of perceived victory over his senile mother, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips, waved a dismissive hand, a gesture of careless arrogance. Mr. Finch, really? Not now. It's Anya's wedding. Any legal matters can surely wait until after the honeymoon. This is hardly the time or place for such things. He winked at Vivian, who offered a tight, conspiratorial smile, convinced this was Aethelred's subtle attempt at further public shaming, perhaps revealing some minor financial detail they had overlooked, something easily dismissed later. This matter cannot wait, Mr. Vance, Mr. Finch replied, his voice firm, his gaze unwavering, a silent challenge. He held up a thick, sealed envelope, its crisp edges glinting under the chandelier light. This is not merely a document. It is Ms. Vance's true gift to you. The one she promised. He then proceeded to hand the envelope directly to Magnus, his movements deliberate and unhurried, ensuring every eye at the main table, and many beyond, was fixed on the transaction. A hush fell over the family table, then rippled outward, spreading through the nearby guests like a sudden chill. Guests began to turn their heads, sensing the profound shift in the atmosphere, the unspoken tension. Magnus, a frown creasing his brow, took the envelope, his fingers fumbling with the seal, a premonition of dread beginning to form in his mind. Vivian leaned in, her eyes sharp with curiosity, eager to see what new game Aethelred was playing. As Magnus tore open the seal, his fingers trembled slightly. He pulled out several pages, crisp legal jargon filling the white paper. His eyes scanned the first paragraph, then the second. The color drained from his face with horrifying speed, leaving it ashen, his lips parted in a silent gasp. Vivian, peering over his shoulder, read the bolded words, and gasped, a small, choked sound, her hand flying to her mouth. "What is this?" Magnus whispered, his voice barely audible, a hoarse croak. His eyes darted frantically from the damning papers to Aethelred, who sat calmly at her table, observing them with a serene, almost detached expression, her gaze unwavering. Mr. Finch stepped forward, his voice clear and resonant, amplified by the sudden, profound silence, ensuring everyone at the main table, and many of the closer guests, could hear every devastating word. "This document, Mr. and Mrs. Vance," he announced, his voice like a gavel striking down, "is a formal notice of eviction for the property at 14 Willow Creek Lane. It outlines the immediate cessation of all mortgage payments and property taxes, effective as of 3 days ago. Furthermore, it details the immediate and permanent cessation of all financial support from Ms. Aethelred Vance to yourselves, your children, and any associated entities. This includes, but is not limited to, all credit lines, vehicle payments, education expenses, and any other recurring financial provisions that have been maintained from her accounts." The words hung in the air, cold and undeniable, each one a hammer blow to their carefully constructed reality. Magnus' face twisted in disbelief, then rage, a horrifying realization dawning in his eyes. Vivian's carefully constructed composure shattered, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, gasping for air. Anya, who had been chatting with her new husband, froze, her eyes wide with shock, her wedding day dissolving into a nightmare. Liam, their younger son, dropped his fork, the clang echoing in the sudden, terrible silence. "This is a joke!" Vivian shrieked, her voice cracking, high-pitched with hysteria. "A cruel, wicked joke, Aethelred. How dare you? On Anya's wedding day. Are you trying to ruin everything? Are you trying to destroy us?" She lunged towards Aethelred, her eyes blazing with fury, her hands outstretched as if to tear her apart, but Magnus, regaining some semblance of control through sheer panic, grabbed her arm, restraining her. "Mother!" Magnus roared, his face contorted in a mask of outrage, fear, and desperate indignation. "What is the meaning of this? Have you gone mad? This is our home. Our life. You can't just take it away. You can't do this to us." His voice was a blend of impotent fury, raw terror, and a desperate, childish indignation, like a spoiled child denied a toy. Aethelred rose slowly from her chair, her posture regal, her silver hair gleaming under the chandeliers, her gaze unwavering as it swept over her son and daughter-in-law, holding their eyes captive. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm, measured, yet imbued with an iron will they had never before witnessed, a quiet power that resonated through the stunned ballroom. "Mad, Magnus? No. For the first time in decades, I feel utterly sane, utterly free." She took a step closer to them, her eyes, once soft and pleading, now holding theirs captive with an unyielding force. "You ask what this means? It means the Bank of Aethelred Vance is officially closed. Permanently. The empty box Anya received was not a joke, Vivian. It was a metaphor. It symbolized the emptiness of your gratitude, the hollow void where your affection for me should have been. It represented the hundreds of millions I have poured into your lives, into your every whim and indulgence, only for you to treat me as an inconvenience, an aging relic, an endlessly flowing tap of money to be turned on and off at your leisure." Magnus took a desperate step back, his eyes darting frantically around the room, acutely aware of the hundreds of eyes on them, the murmuring whispers that had begun to rise. "Mother, please, not here. We can discuss this in private. This is a misunderstanding. We'll explain everything. Just please, not now. He tried to pull her aside, to drag her away from the humiliating public spectacle, but she stood firm, rooted to the spot, unmovable. There is nothing to discuss, and there is no misunderstanding, Aethelred continued, her voice gaining a quiet power that resonated through the entire room, each word weighted with years of suppressed pain. For decades, I have been your silent benefactor, your unseen provider. I bought this mansion for you, paid every mortgage payment, every property tax, every renovation, every extravagant addition. I purchased your luxury cars, multiple times, replacing them at your whim. I funded your lavish vacations around the globe, your endless designer wardrobes, your extravagant parties that excluded me. I paid for Anya and Liam's elite private schools, their university degrees, their very comfortable, privileged lives. I even propped up your failing business ventures, Magnus, time and time again, pouring good money after bad simply to maintain your illusion of success. Her gaze sharpened, piercing through their masks of shock and denial, reaching into the very core of their self-serving existence. And what, pray tell, did I receive in return for this boundless generosity? Mockery behind my back. Exclusion from family gatherings, year after year. Belittling comments about my age and my old-fashioned ways. Overheard whispers about being an ATM, a cash cow to be milked dry. You forgot my birthdays, dismissed my advice as irrelevant, treated me as an embarrassing relic, a burdensome obligation. You saw me not as your mother, Magnus, or your children's grandmother, Vivian, but as a bottomless pit of wealth to be exploited, an endless resource without a soul. Vivian, regaining her voice, shrieked, a desperate, pathetic sound, how dare you accuse us? We love you. We appreciate everything. This is blackmail. You're trying to control us. You're just a bitter, old woman who wants to ruin our lives. Love? Aethelred scoffed softly, a bitter smile touching her lips, a look of profound disappointment etched on her face. Is it love to forget your own mother's 75th birthday? Is it love to exclude me from your Christmas celebrations year after year, claiming you were going on a private family trip paid for with my money? Is it love to laugh at my sincere attempts to connect, to offer a handmade gift, tossed aside like trash? No, Vivian. That is not love. That is contempt, thinly veiled by politeness when you needed another handout, another check from the ATM. Magnus, seeing the public spectacle unfold, the shattered fragments of their reputation scattering across the ballroom floor, dropped to his knees, a desperate, humiliating plea in his eyes, tears, genuine tears of panic, streaming down his face. Mother, please. I beg you. We've made mistakes, I know we have. Terrible ones. But we'll change. We'll be better. We'll visit you every day. We'll show you the respect you deserve. Just please don't do this. Anya's wedding. Our home. Our entire lives are tied to this. We have nothing without you. Vivian, seeing Magnus' complete collapse, frantically joined in, her voice hoarse, her designer gown rumpled and tear-stained. Aethelred, think of your grandchildren. Anya's future is ruined. Liam's education. Do you want to see them on the streets? How can you be so cruel? How can you destroy your own family? Aethelred looked down at her son, kneeling pitifully before her, then at Vivian, her face devoid of pity, only a quiet, resolute sadness for what could have been. You have had decades to show me respect, Magnus. Decades to be better, Vivian. And you chose not to. You chose to consume, to take, to discard. You chose to value money over family, possessions over people. As for your children's future, that is now in your hands. You, their parents, are perfectly capable of working, of providing for them, of teaching them the value of honest labor and genuine effort. You will now learn what it means to stand on your own 2 feet, without my safety net, without my endless generosity. Her voice, though still calm, was now utterly final, resonating with the unwavering power of a woman who had finally found her voice. This decision is not reversible. The eviction notice is legally binding. The cessation of financial support is absolute. You have squandered my goodwill, my affection, and my patience. And now, you will face the consequences of your choices, unmitigated and undeniable. With that, Ethelred turned and walked away, her back straight, her head held high, a beacon of dignified resolve. Mr. Finch gave Magnus and Vivian a final, stern, almost mournful look before following her, leaving them alone in their public humiliation. The ballroom, once filled with joyous celebration, was now a tomb of whispers, gasps, and the raw, desperate sobs of Magnus and Vivian Vance, their opulent world crumbling around them, publicly exposed, leaving them in a desolate, humiliating silence. Anya, still clutching the empty gift box, stared at her parents, her face a mask of horrified comprehension, the illusion of her perfect life shattering around her. Their magnificent wedding, their pinnacle of social triumph, had become the stage for their spectacular, devastating downfall. Magnus and Vivian stumbled out of the ballroom, their faces blotchy and tear-streaked, ignoring the whispers and shocked glances of the remaining guests, who now openly stared, their hushed conversations following them like a morbid chorus. The opulent surroundings of the wedding reception, moments ago a symbol of their success and social standing, now felt like a cruel mockery, each crystal and lily a painful reminder of what they were losing. Anya, devastated and humiliated by the public spectacle, fled with her new husband, eager to escape the wreckage, leaving her parents to their spiraling despair. The drive home to 14 Willow Creek Lane was filled with a terrifying, suffocating silence, punctuated only by Vivian's choked sobs and Magnus' furious, desperate curses, flung wildly at the steering wheel, at the world, at Ethelred. "This can't be happening," Vivian wailed, burying her face in her manicured hands, her voice muffled by her despair. "She can't do this. She just can't. It's our home. Our life. She can, Vivian. She has." Magnus slammed his fist on the dashboard, the impact jarring the expensive car. "Finch wouldn't have been there if it wasn't ironclad. That old hag, she actually did it. After everything we've done for her. The years of listening to her stories, humoring her." The bitter irony of his words was completely lost on him in his blinding panic and self-pity. They burst into their mansion, a place that now felt less like a sanctuary and more like a ticking time bomb. The sheer size of the rooms, the expensive art on the walls, the designer furniture imported from Europe, everything suddenly felt heavy, suffocating, a mocking testament to their impending doom. It was all built on Ethelred's money, and it was all about to be taken away. Magnus immediately began making frantic calls, his fingers trembling as he dialed. He called his own lawyer, a man who typically handled his minor legal skirmishes and contract reviews, and who now, after a thorough review, confirmed the chilling legal validity of Mr. Finch's notice. "Mr. Vance, your mother has simply exercised her right to cease her financial contributions. While emotionally devastating, it is entirely legal. And the property is indeed in her name, with a clear provision that you are occupying it rent-free, which she can revoke at any time. You have 30 days, as per the notice, to vacate the premises." The words hit Magnus like physical blows, each one landing with devastating force. 30 days. To vacate a multi-million-dollar mansion that had been their identity, their status symbol, their very foundation for over a decade. He called his bank, then Vivian's. All accounts they thought they had access to were either frozen, closed, or utterly empty. The credit cards were indeed cancelled, their limitless spending power gone. The auto loans for their luxury cars were in default, the repossession notices likely already in the mail. Notifications for overdue payments for their country club memberships, their exclusive gym, their personal trainer, even their premium cable package, flooded their emails and mailboxes. Vivian, meanwhile, was in the sprawling, state-of-the-art kitchen, ripping open envelopes, her designer dress rumpling as she knelt on the pristine marble floor. The water bill. The electricity. The gas. They're all overdue. Oh my God, Magnus, the property taxes alone are astronomical. And the staff. The cleaners, the landscapers, they haven't been paid in days. They're calling, demanding payment. She collapsed onto the counter, her face pale, her eyes wide with terror. What are we going to do? Where will we go? We have no money. Not a penny of our own. Magnus, overwhelmed, paced furiously, running his hands through his thinning hair. Don't you think I'm trying to figure that out? We need to sell something. Fast. Something valuable. But what? The mansion was technically Aethelred's. Their cars were leased or had loans that were now defaulting. Their designer clothes and jewelry, while valuable, wouldn't cover the mortgage payments for a week, let alone their entire lavish lifestyle. Their assets were illusions, their wealth borrowed. Their social standing, once their most prized possession, the very air they breathed, began to crumble immediately. Whispers spread like wildfire through their elite circle, fueled by the spectacle at the wedding. The humiliation was the talk of the town, the subject of every hushed conversation at charity galas and golf courses. Their friends, who had flocked to them for their lavish parties, their connections, and their constant stream of social events, suddenly became scarce. Phone calls went unanswered. Invitations stopped arriving. Vivian tried to call her closest friends, the ones she had spent countless hours with, only to be met with polite but firm brush-offs. Oh, darling, so sorry, I'm just terribly busy this week, or we're actually traveling indefinitely, dear. They were social pariahs, their source of wealth exposed as a charade, their carefully constructed facade of success ripped away. The children, Anya and Liam, were caught in the devastating crossfire, their lives also appended. Anya, still reeling from the wedding debacle, called her mother, demanding answers, her voice laced with panic. Mom, what is going on? My friends are asking me about Grandma. They're saying we're getting kicked out of the house. What am I supposed to tell them? Vivian, hysterical, screamed into the phone about Ethelred's cruelty, her vindictiveness, her betrayal. Liam, still in university abroad, had his tuition payment declined, his credit cards, tied to his parents' accounts, also frozen. He called in a panic, suddenly facing the prospect of dropping out, his comfortable future dissolving before his eyes. Magnus, utterly defeated, could only tell him to find a job, to figure it out himself, a concept completely alien to his son. Their marriage, once held together by shared ambition and the comfortable illusion of endless wealth, began to fray at the seams, unraveling under the immense strain of financial hardship and the raw exposure of their true, self-serving characters. Accusations flew back and forth, venomous and bitter. This is your fault, Magnus. You never paid enough attention to her. You should have tried harder to get her to like me. You knew how she was. Vivian shrieked, her voice raw. My fault? You're the one who mocked her to her face. You treated her like a servant. You were always pushing for more, more, more. Magnus retorted, their voices escalating into bitter, venomous exchanges that filled the once elegant mansion with the sounds of misery. The grand, opulent mansion, once a symbol of their success and happiness, became a battleground of recriminations, blame, and desperate, futile planning. While Magnus and Vivian descended into chaos, their lives crumbling around them, Ethelred was experiencing a newfound, profound peace. That evening, after the wedding, she had a quiet dinner with Mr. Finch at a small, elegant restaurant she rarely visited. He raised a glass of fine wine to her. To your courage, Mrs. Vance. It takes immense strength to do what you have done, to sever such deep, painful ties. Ethelred smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached her eyes, reflecting a lightness in her spirit. It takes more strength to endure years of being invisible, Mr. Finch. This feels not like an ending, but like freedom. A beginning. The next day, Ethelred did something she hadn't done in years, something that felt utterly transformative. She called Eleanor, an old friend from her university days, a woman whose friendship was based on shared laughter, intellectual curiosity, and genuine affection, not on wealth or status. Their connection had been neglected over the years, overshadowed by Ethelred's family obligations. "Eleanor, my dear," Ethelred said, her voice light, infused with a joy Eleanor immediately recognized. "It's Ethelred. I know it's been far too long, far too long. I was wondering, would you like to take that trip to Florence we always talked about? The one we promised ourselves in our youth? My treat, of course. No expense spared, but for genuine pleasure this time, for shared experiences, not for indulgence." Eleanor, surprised but utterly delighted, readily agreed, her own voice warm with rekindled affection. Ethelred spent the afternoon planning the trip, not with a demanding, entitled family in mind, but with the quiet joy of anticipating a shared adventure with a true friend, a journey of discovery for herself. She felt a lightness in her step, a profound sense of relief washing over her, as if a monumental weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The weight of expectations, the burden of unappreciated generosity, had been lifted, replaced by the exhilarating lightness of self-determination. For the first time in decades, Aethelred Vance was living for herself, guided by her own desires, her own peace. The first tremors of the earthquake had subsided, leaving wreckage for some, and a clear, open, sunlit path for others. Months passed, turning the initial shockwaves of the wedding day into settled dust, a new, stark reality. The grand mansion at 14 Willow Creek Lane stood empty for a while, a forlorn monument to a collapsed empire, its manicured lawns growing wild, its once gleaming windows dark and vacant. It was eventually foreclosed upon and sold to new, less ostentatious owners, people who appreciated its beauty without succumbing to its illusions of grandeur. Its former occupants, Magnus and Vivian Vance, were nowhere to be found in the glittering social circles they once dominated, their names now whispered with pity or derision. Ethelred, however, was thriving, her spirit blossoming with each passing day. She had indeed gone to Florence with Eleanor, a trip filled not with hurried sightseeing, but with leisurely strolls through ancient streets, quiet moments in stunning art galleries, and long, joyous conversations over delicious Italian food and local wines. It was a revelation, a rediscovery of the world and, more importantly, of herself. She rediscovered her latent love for painting, taking lessons from a local artist and spending hours in her sunlit conservatory, transforming blank canvases with vibrant colors, her strokes filled with newfound passion. She volunteered at a local library, sharing her love for literature with eager children, their innocent wonder a balm to her soul. She started a small gardening club in her community, tending to roses and herbs with a quiet joy she hadn't felt in decades, her hands finding comfort in the soil. Her days were no longer dictated by the insatiable demands of her son's family, nor overshadowed by the constant, corrosive hum of their ingratitude. She ate when she was hungry, slept when she was tired, and pursued hobbies that genuinely brought her contentment and peace. She looked younger, her silver hair still immaculate, but her eyes now sparkling with a newfound vitality, her face softer, less burdened. Her laugh, once rare and subdued, a polite chuckle, was now frequent and hearty, bubbling up from a place of genuine happiness. She no longer bought lavish gifts for others, instead, she invested in experiences for herself, and for the few, true friends who valued her presence, her conversation, and her laughter, not her purse. She found immense satisfaction in spending her own money on her own happiness, on simple pleasures that brought genuine fulfillment, a true sense of abundance. The silence in her home was no longer lonely, it was peaceful, a sanctuary for her rejuvenated spirit. Magnus and Vivian, stripped of Aethelred's financial lifeline, had been forced to confront a brutal, unforgiving reality. After losing the mansion and almost all their possessions to foreclosure and debt, they moved into a modest, two-bedroom apartment in a less desirable part of the city, a stark, jarring contrast to their previous opulence. Magnus, unable to find a quick path back to his former glory or his entrepreneurial ventures, eventually took a mundane, salaried job in a sales department, a stark drop from his grand aspirations. Vivian, initially despondent and directionless, found herself needing to work for the first time in her adult life. Her expensive tastes, her lack of practical skills, and her entitled attitude meant she struggled immensely, eventually settling for a low-paying administrative role that left her perpetually stressed, bitter, and resentful of her drastically reduced circumstances. Their marriage, once held together by shared ambition and the comfortable illusion of endless wealth, buckled irrevocably under the crushing strain of financial hardship and the raw exposure of their true, selfish characters. The constant bickering over bills, the accusations, the gnawing resentment of their drastically reduced circumstances, eroded any remaining affection, leaving only a hollow shell. They lived together in a state of simmering animosity, blaming each other, blaming Aethelred, blaming everyone but themselves for their downfall. Anya and Liam also had to adjust to a new reality. Anya, with her new husband, had to scale back their own extravagant plans and learn to live within their means, a concept completely alien to her upbringing. Liam, after briefly dropping out of university when his tuition was cut, found a part-time job to pay for his classes and learned the value of hard work and self-reliance, a profound lesson his parents had never taught him. There were occasional, hesitant attempts from Anya to reach out to Aethelred, a quiet text message or a brief phone call, tinged with a distant regret and perhaps a nascent understanding. Aethelred responded politely, with a quiet dignity, but always maintained a healthy distance. She had learned, with painful wisdom, that boundaries were not walls built to keep people out, but rather definitions of self-respect, lines drawn to protect one's peace and well-being. The story of Aethelred Vance is a powerful testament to the fact that money, no matter how vast, can never truly buy love, respect, or genuine affection. It can buy loyalty, certainly, and comfort, and extravagant lifestyles, but the bonds that truly matter are forged in shared moments of vulnerability, kindness, and reciprocal care, not in dollar signs or grand gestures of financial aid. Aethelred's journey teaches us that for too long, she allowed herself to be defined by what she could provide, rather than by who she was as a person. Her greatest act of love, in the end, was not for her ungrateful family, but for herself. She learned that sometimes, the most profound act of generosity is the one you bestow upon your own spirit, reclaiming your dignity, setting firm boundaries, and finding your own path to happiness, even if it means leaving others to find their own way in the harsh, unforgiving light of reality. We hope Aethelred's inspiring story of reclaiming her life resonated deeply with you. This channel is dedicated to bringing you powerful narratives of justice, transformation, and profound life lessons, much like Aethelred's. If you were moved by her journey from quiet suffering to absolute liberation, make sure you don't miss any of our future stories. We invite you to join our growing community. Please take a moment to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you're always the first to know when a new, impactful story is released. And now, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever faced such profound ingratitude from someone you've helped? Or perhaps you've had to make a difficult decision to protect your own peace and well-being, even if it meant significant change? What would you have done in Aethelred's shoes? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments section below. Your insights and stories are incredibly valuable to us and to the community here. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story of Justice Served.